Hello everyone, are you ready for today's story? Okay, right, turn on your ears, turn on your looking eyes, turn on that powerful computer in your head called the brain, and zip up your zippers. I don't unzip mine, otherwise I won't be able to tell the story. Anyway, this is a story about seeds, okay? And some seeds need different things, but we'll find out. So it's called Every Seed Has Its Speed, okay? So once upon a time, in a far-off land, there lived a little boy called Douglas. And one day, Douglas's granddad gave him a small piece of his garden and said, "Douglas, this now belongs to you. Weed it and feed it and seed it, and it will always look after you. Be patient though, because every seed has its speed." Douglas got some tools out of his granddad's shed and started to dig the soil. And when he'd pulled out every weed, and he raked it over until it was perfectly flat. Douglas's granddad helped him go online to order some seeds, and a few days later a big brown envelope turned up with lots of seed packets inside. Douglas looked at them and noticed that they were all different shapes and sizes. His granddad explained that some seeds are very, very tiny and they blow around on the wind. Others are bigger and stick to the legs of insects, and they spread them around as they visit different parts of the garden each day. Some seeds, he said, are hidden inside berries and are eaten by birds, and it's only when they've been pooped out that they're able to grow. Douglas thought this was fascinating, but also rather funny, because it contained poop. Grandad explained that the biggest seed in the world is called the coco de mer, and that looks just like a great big bottom. Douglas found that even more funny. Over the next few days, Douglas started to plant his seeds, carefully checking the instructions to see how they needed to be planted, how much water they needed, and how deep they needed to go. And then he sat and waited. Over the next few days, Douglas noticed some of the seeds started to grow. The first were the cress seeds, which were growing little green shoots before the end of the week, encouraged by the warm sunshine and Douglas's frequent watering with the watering can. One by one, all the others started to grow. The tomatoes and the potatoes, all except one. And this made Douglas a bit sad, because this seed was of a beautiful flower that his granddad had given him, and said that it was a very precious seed. And when he grew it, he was to remember his granddad, because just as every seed has its speed to grow, so every one of us has a time to go. Douglas grew up and went to school and university, and he studied all the wonderful things to do with nature. His granddad became poorly, and Douglas wasn't able to see him anymore. And after many, many years, Douglas returned to his garden. And whilst his vegetables and his flowers continued to thrive, the special flower that his granddad gave him all those years ago still hadn't grown. And in fact, he'd planted it so long ago that he couldn't even remember where it was now. Then, one day, Douglas was visiting the big city when a big fire spread through the outback and destroyed the little potting shed where he kept his granddad's tools, and also killed all the beautiful vegetable plants and flower plants in his garden. Douglas sat down and cried. Even though he was a grown-up, he was sad, and it was okay to cry. But he remembered his granddad's words, and so a month later he came back to his garden with some new shiny tools ready to start again. And there, in the exact place where he planted it all those years ago with his granddad, was a shoot from the special flower. Douglas went on his phone and checked, and sure enough, he found that the special seed was from a flower called a Protea, and that this seed only grows after the ground has been burnt. And he remembered his granddad's words all those years ago. Every seed has its speed, and he smiled. And in fact, it was 6 years later, when Douglas had his own little boy, that the special flower bloomed. And once the flower faded, Douglas collected the seed and gave some to his little boy, and told him to choose a patch in the garden and plant it, but to remember it might be a long, long time before it grew, because, as his granddad said so wisely, every seed has its speed. Well, I think that was a lovely story. I'll see you again soon.